So I think that we need to be a little bit more discerning with what we treat as 49ers news. Woke up here on the Central Coast. Shout out to Atascadero. The marine layer burned off. No more May Gray. And I looked at X and I saw that the 49ers reportedly were offered a second-round pick for George Kittle before they re-signed him to the massive extension, but they said no. And now everybody's running around like chickens with their heads cut off as if this was news. It's not news. In the NFL, GMs field calls all the time. George Kittle for a second-round pick would have been a joke. Do I doubt that it happened? No. I'm sure that there was a phone call. I'm sure that teams probed the 49ers for interest, but this happens with every single big negotiation or around every single big negotiation in the league. It was much more prominent back when Brandon Aiyuk was negotiating with the 49ers. Back then, they actually considered trading Brandon Aiyuk because that was becoming problematic. It's happened with other players. It's going to happen in the future when the 49ers are negotiating contracts with star players. It will happen for players who are not in active contract negotiations. There are calls that happen all the time in the NFL, and to act like it's a big deal that the 49ers were offered a second-round pick for George Kittle is a misrepresentation of how this league works. So on this channel, we like to focus on what's actually news. And this is something that somehow slipped through the cracks because it has to do with George Kittle, but also it has to do with another superstar on the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey. There's a lot of doubt about Christian McCaffrey's ability to return and dominate the way that he did before 2024. He had bilateral Achilles tendinitis in 2024. That's what caused him to miss a lot of the season. Christian did return fully healthy from the Achilles tendinitis, and he suffered a different injury, a PCL slight tear, or maybe even just a strain. But strain, tear, those are two overlapping kind of things. It's just a degree of severity. But it was a totally different injury that McCaffrey suffered against Buffalo that's often conflated with the first injury, the Achilles tendinitis, which scares a lot of people because it could be a precursor to an Achilles rupture. However, McCaffrey is 100% healed from that tendinitis. He continues to be 100% healed from that tendinitis. And all indications are that he can be back to his old self here in 2025. Well, it turns out that George Kittle was also dealing with bilateral Achilles tendinosis. This was a few years ago, and he went to Panama to seek stem cell treatment for it. Have a listen to George Kittle. This is a video that came out in 2024 when he was 30 years old.
I'm George Kittle. I'm 30 years old. I'm down here in Panama at the Stem Cell Institute. I'm a professional athlete, just always trying to get my body better. When I talked to you guys last time, I was dealing with double Achilles tendinosis. Through the treatment here and just through some small rehab, was able to completely knock that out. I haven't had an issue since I treated it last time. Don't even have to do anything else to it. It's been fantastic.
So it's unclear when exactly Kittle pursued this treatment. Obviously, he recorded that video after it was deemed a success, but he's playing the best football of his career now after dealing with an injury that was very, very similar to Christian McCaffrey's. And George Kittle is a little bit older than Christian McCaffrey. 1,000-yard receiving seasons in 2 straight campaigns for George Kittle. Amazing rapport with Brock Purdy. There's obviously a lot in common between Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Both are going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, and both fighting through the Achilles tendinosis. Now, I don't know, or tendinitis in McCaffrey's case, but obviously 2 very, very similar conditions. I don't know exactly what treatments Christian McCaffrey has gone through. I know that the whole Germany thing was publicized last year. We know that Kittle went to Panama, but I'm sure that Christian McCaffrey has done everything in his power to get his body ready to perform at the highest level. And the fact that George Kittle has seen success in a similar situation should add extra reason to believe that Christian McCaffrey can also be back at 100%. I mean, speaking of all these guys, they're golfing together, and guess who else was part of the crew? Brandon Aiyuk. Brock Purdy in there as well, of course. Kyle Juszczyk. Trent Taylor golfing with the 49ers. But Brandon Aiyuk, I mean, we talk about recovering from an injury. Brandon Aiyuk is coming back from ACL and MCL tears. So the 49ers have unfortunately been dealing with a lot of complications over the course of the past couple seasons. And, some of it has to do with the fact that this team has played so many big games, just so many games, period, over the course of the past several seasons. Often they look at some of these Achilles issues, the tendonitis or tendinosis, as overuse injuries and overtraining injuries. It's hard to pinpoint exactly where some of this stuff came from. Aiyuk's obviously came from a hit to the knee against the Kansas City Chiefs. But the bottom line is that the 49ers want everyone back and as healthy as possible for this 2025 season, because when they are at full strength, they are tough to beat. The draft class is here to take some pressure off of the A-list core, but the A-list core still remains extremely necessary for the 49ers to reach the ultimate goal. And the A-list core for this team is still robust. That's why it's so cool to see Brandon Aiyuk golfing with members of the A-list core, because Aiyuk is trying to reestablish his presence in that group. At every single position, the 49ers strive to have a star. At quarterback, they've got Brock Purdy. At running back, they have Christian McCaffrey. At fullback, they have Kyle Juszczyk. At tight end, they have George Kittle. Trent Williams is the big left tackle. He's the anchor of the line. Bosa, Fred Warner on defense. Deommodore Lenoir in that secondary. Aiyuk can be that guy in the receiver room for the 49ers. He was that guy in 2023. There's a lot of drama, and there was an injury in 2024. So that's something that the Aiyuk will have to overcome, and the 49ers need him to be back to solve the biggest issue with the offense last year, which was that lack of separation. But the draft class is now aboard to supplement what the 49ers have at those core foundational pillar positions. And, one of the big stories of this week that people like to talk about is the fact that essentially everybody is in the building for the 49ers offseason program. It might be perfect attendance. It was close to perfect attendance before George Kittle showed up. I guess he had some WrestleMania to tend to before he showed up. But now Trent Williams is in the building. Nick Bosa posted, I believe, from Los Gatos a couple weeks ago before the offseason program started. So he's not doing it in Fort Lauderdale. 49ers are all trying to make sure that they're riding the ship on the same page after a marathon of a run from 2021 to 2023 really drained them. And we saw that fatigue in 2024. We saw the injuries in 2024. Now they have that new draft class in. They've renovated the roster, and it's up to the foundational pillars, many of whom are playing golf together, to help steer the ship in the right direction. That's the news that matters regarding the 49ers. They're never planning to trade George Kittle, who's one of those foundational pillars, one of the main reasons why the 49ers are so optimistic moving forward with the collection of talent that they have. Both rookies, veterans, and everything in between. They've got to find the right mix, and Kittle is a huge, indispensable part of that cocktail.